Hello everyone, welcome to iTuber, an expert channel where we talk about the latest news and trends in the crypto world, blockchain industry, and ICO development. Today our guest is Fraser Brown, the founder of ACT ICO. Fraser, hello, it's very nice having you today.
It's nice to be here, thanks.
Well, I hope our interview will be a very constructive one and very informative one. For the start, tell us briefly about your project, the main idea behind it, and why you decided to start it.
It's a very simple idea. Everywhere and in every circumstance, there's an imbalance in power between citizens and between the state. Okay? And the only way to solve that imbalance is to kind of amplify citizen voice and put in place some sort of platform, some sort of system where citizens are more empowered and more capable of making the state accountable to what they want and to their needs.
Okay, thank you. What about the market cap and the potential of growth?
I think it's a very big space. If you think of platforms like change.org or Avaz, they boast in excess of 100 million users. But these platforms don't raise funds, they simply collect signatures. The ACT platform will raise funds so that it can fund causes and initiatives that are about social accountability and social issues.
Well, that's very interesting. Okay, and the next question is, what is the purpose of the blockchain technology in your project, and what is the role of decentralization? And in short, was there actually, was it really necessary to have blockchain in it?
The ACT platform is a decentralized autonomous organization. So it's by definition a blockchain organization. It couldn't be any other organization. But to speak to the specifics, the proposals are submitted to the platform and they are curated by people, by a community, a decentralized community. This community receives part of the revenue of the platform and it's distributed among the community. It doesn't need a CEO. It doesn't need a committee to decide whether this gets funded or that. It's done by the crowd. It's done on the blockchain. It's transparent and it's immutable. And it's unstoppable.
Okay. So you said that it doesn't need a CEO. It is about the crowd who decides it. Is it with the help of the tokens? Tell us about the role of the tokens in the project.
Correct. So this project has two main tokens. One is called ACT and the other is called Action. So ACT will be the publicly traded token, which you can buy now in the crowd sale. And Action is the reward token in this curation decentralized platform. So people will be able to earn these rewards for curating proposals if they hold Action tokens. These are vesting tokens, which they can only invest out of over a period of 12 months. And the only way to buy Action tokens is with ACT tokens.
Okay, so they are somehow connected. You cannot have one without the other one.
Correct. ACT is the unit of currency of Action.
Okay. Okay, just to make sure, can you please quickly explain what will the token holders get when they have the ACT and the Action?
Yeah. So ACT is the way to buy Action. And once you have Action, then you can curate on the platform. So the platform makes its money or gets its revenue from citizens buying votes. And these votes they can apply to causes. So this revenue, 80% of it is given to the causes, and 15% is distributed to the curators. So it's a very interesting model in the sense that the ACT token, the value of the ACT token, is actually tied to a revenue model. It's not only tied to an idea that the network has value. Of course, the network does have value, and there are many network effects in our sort of token economy, but the two are actually directly linked. However, people aren't earning some sort of share, or it's not some sort of security, because people can only derive benefits from action tokens by doing work, i.e. curation. Curation, just for the translation, I mean, that speaks to vetting proposals, making sure proposals are good and worth pushing to the community for voting. Yeah.
Well, next question. Tell us about the team, who they are, what are their background. In one of your videos on YouTube, I did a small follow-up. You said that none of the creators are actually software developers.
Yeah, well, we're quite an interesting project. We've now raised over $250,000 in the current pre-ICO. So we've started work on the platform, and it's a partnership between myself and my colleagues on this side and a developer in Germany called Draglet, which has over 5 years experience in this space, developing cryptocurrency exchanges. So they're really experienced. I mean, to be honest with you, I was very happy with this relationship, because as many companies raised a lot of money with ICOs, it became much harder and harder to get technical talent. And I think we're in a very good position now, having this very tight and close partnership with a big company. And we now have a team of 5 developers that have started work on the smart contracts. So having said that we're not software developers, true, but do we know? I mean, in my past, I was chief operating officer of a software firm with 15 developers, and of course we know the game. We know the industry, and we know software development.
All right.
But I don't stay up until midnight coding.
So what is the main advantage then, not being the software developer, but having a different background?
Well, the ACT platform, it's not a technology company, in fact. It's about social action. It's about civic mobilization. Sure, the skills of being able to manage software teams, which I have anyway, are beneficial. But in the long term, this isn't a technology company, actually. The skills that are required are very much around marketing, around community management, growth, about identifying ways to create network effect, and in strategy about the design of the platform and how to make it grow and expand. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm happy to rely on my colleagues who are, I suppose, the best smart contract developers in the world. Which is
Okay.
That's a big
Is there an escrow agent in your ICO, and who is it?
So this is a pre-ICO, okay, which by definition is sort of friendlier participants. Okay. What we've done is we have a four signature multi-sig wallet. And what we did, we have 2 signatures on Draglet's side, which is a software developer, and 2 on our side. And it requires 3 signatures to pay. So this is the governance that we put in at this stage with smaller amounts of money. And I think it's appropriate, I think it's safe, and it's working well.
Okay.
Can I just say on this, as this industry develops and as a lot of money comes, some of these organizations, escrow or audit or whatever, they are charging obscene amounts of money. And it doesn't often represent good value for money for those who are putting their hard-earned cash into these projects to throw 2% or 4% at somebody just with a name just to provide the auditing. And I don't mind saying that.
All right. Then what about the legitimacy? and in general, accountability if you don't have this escrow agent. Can you expand on that?
Well, first of all, what are you seeking the escrow for in this instance of the pre-ICO money?
You tell me.
Yeah, I mean, we're raising money and we're putting it's half with the software developer and half with us. And we need the money to pay the software development. We don't need to pay 2% of that money for an escrow person to hold it for 3 days. I don't think that represents. Whose money is that? What person who participated wants to do that? I mean, down the road for bigger sums, we could consider that if it's a reasonable fee. But, you know, on the audit side, again, some of these firms are charging extortionate amounts of money, demanding extortionate amounts. One asked for 2% of the entire tokens of the entire project and 2% of all money raised. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for doing what? So, you know, this is the market they're in. But what did we do? Instead, we found 2 extremely reputable auditors that were involved with very, very big projects. And they charged high, but very kind of good rates for top talent. And that's what we need to do. And as sort of the CEO of this project, my job is not to get ripped off, right? It's to pay the right price for everything and to put in the right mechanisms and so on. And a 4-signature multi-sig wallet, 2 on one company and 2 on ours, for this scale of financing is perfectly fine, in my opinion. Oh. But it's up for people to decide, of course.
That was a very insightful answer. Thank you very much. So what kind of a problem in the market do you solve, and what makes you different from your competitors? And have you looked into it? Are there any competitors to you in the market?
Not really, not yet. And of course, this is an open source project, and we hope this will be the start of a change in the entire nonprofit and NGO sector. But, you know, tangible problems that exist here. If you think of a community, a good example is a community in Wales currently, which is in the United Kingdom, and they're fighting another open cast coal mine. One was started in 2004. There were desperate consequences for the community's health, desperate consequences for employment in the area because employers left because of the pollution. And of course, environmentally, huge problems as well. Yet, they want to do another open cast coal mine. And this community is just saying no. And protesters came from all over Europe and closed down this coal mine, but still the company goes ahead. And this tiny community of very poor people need to raise a lot of money to make sure that at the public inquiry, they can say no and they can stand up to this. Now, this is the problem that this solves, okay? Where does that community go to raise money? It's very, very difficult. If they apply for grants, it can take months on end. It's decided by a small committee on the 18th floor of some building in London, right? Nobody knows them. ACT just demolishes that whole system and makes it entirely open, entirely democratized and decentralized. If their proposal is vetted by curators, it's pushed to the main platform. If the people, all of the people using the platform, agree that this is a good cause, they vote, and if a quorum is reached, the smart contract pays. Now, this can apply to any cause. An ACT can fund any issue, any cause, at any speed and at any scale. And that's why it's terrifying, but that's why it's needed. Because NGOs and the existing way of doing this is not going to get it done. And it's not moving, it doesn't move fast enough.
All right. That's very interesting. Well, let's move to the next question. Are there any publications about your project in any accredited or reputable media or are there any public figures that represent your project and where we can read about them?
Yeah, that's actually happening at the moment. We had one, what you would call an independent journalist report in F News that was published the other day. And we had another one in Core Media. And I have another interview. I shouldn't really say the publication that he's connected with, but it's one of the very big ones. And that's happening tomorrow. So this is a very early stage. We pushed out a lot of press releases and so on ourselves, and it's starting now to get on the radar of the bigger people, So no, we're excited about that. But we want to really change the focus from blockchain, from crypto tokens to the causes that we're going to address. And we're going to start working with causes straight away and helping them to come in to an alpha version of the platform, and people can see this working.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us about the vision of the project then. Is there a roadmap, and what are the deadlines, milestones?
Absolutely. I mean, back to the developers that we're working with, Draglet in Munich, Germany. What we did was we detailed the project and it broke it down into 6 modules. Then what we did was something which some people felt was I shouldn't have done, but what I wanted to do, and I did do. I published the costings. I published their costings, and it's available for anybody to read, and it breaks down the timelines of these 6 modules of the platform and the cost. And you can see now that we've raised enough money in the pre-ICO to more than cover the cost of it. This is going to be built. The smart contract will create and distribute ACT tokens. So this is on. And that document kind of represents the roadmap. Now the developers are working long hours already, and the more detailed kind of technical design is underway. So there'll be more coming out in the coming weeks. But incidentally, our pre-ICO closes at 1700 hours CEST tomorrow, the 1st of August, as you know. So,
yes.
Which is why we had to speed up and have this interview in a basement.
Yes, right. Okay, is there a minimal value product, or so-called a prototype? And
Yeah,
if yes, is there an initial code in GitHub which can be found?
Yeah. Well, way back the answer is no to that question. But way back in January, we did build a prototype on the Ethereum testnet. It's not something we needed to really publish, actually. But what will we do? We will go the standard route of an alpha product and then a beta product. And then ultimately, when we have our Swiss foundation in place and our license agreement, it will be an open source project with a transformational effect, we hope. Mm-hmm. And it's a very interesting point that this process of ICO, it's so very different than a normal way of growing and funding a business. But one of the terrific things about it is the involvement of the community, not just financially, but they can come in, and there have been ideas that came out of Slack, which we saw and we just adopted immediately. And it didn't come from the team. So we hope that sort of effect will grow and grow, you see. It's like we're all in it together.
Yeah, that's amazing. Mm. Yeah. Okay, who is the target audience of the project? Tell us about it.
ACT is a very big idea, a very big idea. And it only works if a broad section of the population get involved. When you think about crowdfunding, okay, you see something you're interested in, and you decide to donate $10 or $100. This is different than crowdfunding. Members, and I see like millions, in any country, millions of members being involved. What they would do is they would keep their ACT sort of wallet topped up. In the same way as if you have a pay-as-you-go mobile phone plan, you keep your SMSs topped up. You don't just buy an SMS when you want to send an SMS, Right? So in the same way, you'll keep your votes topped up, and as proposals come to you, you're voting yes or no on these. And as the quorum is reached, these amazing movements and actions are being funded, and change is happening. So yeah, it's very fundamentally different in crowdfunding. But what's very interesting about it is, I think that one of the reasons why people don't get more involved in some of the very big issues of the world is because they feel that their contribution isn't really enough, right? Somebody else will do it. You know, a child falls over in front of you, you run and you pick the child up, and you drop everything, you know, but the polar ice caps are melting and you do nothing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, with the ACT platform, because everybody's votes are needed to trigger and move very substantial amounts of funding for these important initiatives, because everybody's vote is needed, everybody has to get involved. And everybody's involvement makes a difference. So that's the little piece of magic in it.
Okay, so the target audience is everybody. Did I get it right?
The target audience is everybody. And this brings in very interesting challenges if you think globally. So exactly. If you think of the many people in the world who earn less than $1 a day, and yet you think of the inhabitants of Manhattan, New York. So what price do you make one vote? And, you know, 10 cents is meaningless to the person in New York. So therefore, they have to be able to apply a certain number of votes to a proposal. But then we also have to build it in such a way that wealthy people can't buy control. So these are the many challenges that we have to build into the design of this platform, and that we are building in. And the things that keep us awake at night, as you can see, it's not easy.
Okay, can you elaborate further on the challenges you have now? Like, just to list some of them, as you said, you have so many of them. You can list several of them. And how are you going to tackle them?
Yeah, well, I'm very excited about the team. They've got up to speed very, very fast, and are already working very long hours, because they realize as well that we have to produce the smart contract, the ICO smart contract that's going to create and distribute the ACT token. Because anybody participating in funding rounds, what they want to do is they want, you know, this contribution to be liquid. Okay, so they want to be able to exchange it. So that is the absolute urgency, really. And of course, one of the greater challenges. There are a lot of technical challenges, some of which I mentioned. But the thing we're very focused on is the timeline. By early November, we want to have the smart contract ready to go. Yeah. But all of the features of the beta version towards the end of the year, if not early January. Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about the conditions for the participation in the ICO. What are the planned price for a token? As you mentioned earlier, how we're going to solve it, and how many of them will be issued, and what are you going to do with the tokens that will not be sold during the ICO? Are you going to burn them or dispose them? And is there any strategy for that? Can you tell that about? Can you tell about that? Yeah.
And we did something radically different than other ICOs here. What we did was we said we're giving away, or we're distributing 80% of the tokens to the donation rounds. Okay, and that's all the tokens. So then what we're doing is, when we finish our pre-ICO, followed by what we're doing is a pre-release access stage, followed by the full ICO, then quite simply, whoever contributed and whatever bonus round they contributed will equate to the proportion of all of the ACT tokens that they're given. So it's very different than creating pools, and we did this very deliberately because we felt it was transparent and very straightforward and very fair. And what we did was we now have in the pre-ICO, for literally less than 1 day, a 5x bonus. So if you were to contribute $1,000, then it would be the same as somebody contributing $5,000 in the ICO.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very limited offer to the pre-ICO. And that's why it's been very attractive, even though the project's very early stage. But that was our design, and that's what's enabled us to get essentially seed funding.
I would really want to ask you to elaborate on that further, but unfortunately we are running out of time and I have 2 more questions. So we have to move on, unfortunately. So do you have any agreements with exchange markets about the placement of your tokens once the ICO is over?
So, I mean, the exchange market is moving very fast and changing very fast. And there's a lot of noise about decentralized exchanges and so on. It's a big question from some of the larger contributors. So, and actually they have not just come with a question, they've come with many ideas about how to do this. So it's really high on my priority to start to do that. But before we've even sort of developed, much of the platform, it's a little premature to do it. But believe me, when the smart contract creates tokens, we'll be very ready and hopefully have these relationships in place. But at the end of the day, it's up to the exchanges, isn't it? What they do with your token. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, now we have time when you can address our audience of investors directly. If you have a message or you want them to know something, please, it's time.
Yeah, I think, and I've always said about this project, the crypto community is a generous community. Many people in this community have done very well out of the rise in price of particularly Bitcoin and other opportunities. And I think that this is a project that really everybody should be involved in. I mean, there may be 100 ICOs happening at the moment. So much noise. And of course, these very, very clever and shrewd crypto investors are looking and analyzing to pick this one and that one. ACT is a social project, fundamentally. And it is desperately, it is absolutely needed in the landscape of the political landscape worldwide, the issues that we're facing. And whatever they mind, whether high or low, I just think this is one that everybody should be in to some level. And if we can get time before this closes, then jump in while the big bonuses are there. But of course, you can reach out to us. We're a small team. You can reach out on Slack and via email, and you can ask questions. And we really enjoy that two-way dialogue with very experienced crypto people, because it's a two-way street of ideas. It's very valuable.
Okay. Well, Fraser, thank you very much for your time and for agreeing on having this interview with us. I really think that it was very constructive and you gave very insightful answers and comments. Also, we really hope that the project will be a big success and we wish you best of luck. As for the audience, dear audience, if you liked our interview, please subscribe, comment below, and write your questions, and we'll come back to you as soon as possible with the best answers. Thank you very much for being with us, and see you next time.
Yep, thank you, everybody. Good night.